as legitimate, authentic Dutch, which is also the Dutch from Limburg. I mean, they will say, "Oh, it's funny Dutch," but they do consider it Dutch,
nonetheless.
An accent of Dutch, an accepted accent of Dutch. Well, while if you speak Dutch like someone from Southeast, who grew up there with the different local words and stuff like that, it's considered
It's a problem.
Yes, you might be considered to be less educated or considered to have a smaller vocabulary because you're judged on an ethnic basis.
Thank you for pointing that
You're
out.
not necessary. It's still a legitimate version of Dutch because it's a level of Dutch that happens in the Netherlands, but it has a color to it. They
Thank you for pointing that out.
hear a color.
They hear a color.
They hear a color, and that's where the judgment is worse.
I understand. Hello everybody and welcome to the Sonny Jermain show. I am so excited to have this wonderful guest. She is my first guest, and what a lovely way for us to kick off the show with a proud black woman. She's an Afro-Dutch woman of Congolese and Angolan ancestry. I want to unpack that a lot. You know I do. I love my Afro. You know she's all Afro. I love the hair and everything. She is Miss Carla Kabamba. She is one of the 45 councillors of the city of Amsterdam. After a nice election victory this 2022, I am more than happy and I am so blessed to steal a few moments of her time from the people of Amsterdam. Carla, welcome.
Thank you for having me, Sonny. You said it correctly. It's very recent that I became a city councillor in March 2022. So I'm now getting used to being in that position.
How is it like? Were you nervous? I watched your maiden speech. It was in Dutch, of course. My Dutch comes and goes. I can pick some things. But I heard the mayor say, "Mooie speech."
She did. Yeah. No, how does it feel? Well, with my background, Congolese and Angolan, there's not many Congolese and Angolan people in Amsterdam. So, with that being said, the reaction from people from my communities, I must say, was on one hand surprise because there's only been one person of Congolese descent to ever be in city council. That's Bantu in Eindhoven. There's never been a Congolese woman, and there had never been an Angolan person. So that was something, you know. And on my way there, people were telling me, when they were finding out my background, they were telling me, if you do make it, this is also a layer on top, because being first means that people really watch you, and if you make a mistake, it's like horrible and stuff like that. But when it actually happened, it was really weird to me because you're in this election, but you're really focused on making sure that you get enough votes to even be in council. So my idea was I need to get at least 2,000 people. If I don't have 2,000 people, I can be pushed down on the list, and someone else can take my position if the others do have enough. So that was my focus. I never could imagine that I would exceed that or even double that in the way that I
5,008.
Yeah. When I saw that number, I didn't believe it. I saw it it was sent to me, and I turned off my phone to restart the phone because I was like,
how you doing?
Yeah, I don't think I saw that correctly. I restarted the phone. I saw the 5,000 again. My eyes went popping like this, and I called my mom.
Of course.
Yeah. And I started calling my family, and I sent the screenshot. Look how many votes. And I was wondering, like, where did these people come from?
Yeah.
Even though you do the whole campaigning thing, the focus was on getting the message across and doing well that day.
Yeah.
I was trying not to see it as something that makes you very known, even or public, even though you become a public figure.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to focus on making sure the message comes across, and I'm also mentally preparing for if I don't make it. And it sounds very, I mean, it sounds very, negative, but I
can understand.
Yeah, I was trying to prepare for both. So I was trying to always say, okay, this went well, but this didn't go so well. And if someone would disagree with me or withdraw their support from me, it might be because of this, that, and I would work on that.
Yeah.
So I would take it day by day.
Yeah.
And that feeling just switched. I was I saw my name on the screen, and it was like, now I have to, yeah.
I saw your reaction also on social media, like, Carla Kabamba, 5,000 It was like, because I remember we've been trying to do this interview for a while with other platforms before you won, and they were like, well, who is she? I'm like, oh, you don't know who she is. You're gonna know. Don't you just want to say, how do you like me now?
Well, in some cases, I do. I'm a human being. Everyone has their pride.
Yeah.
In some cases, some people were so, they just told me to my face, I don't think you will make it.
Yeah.
And they had different reasons.
Yeah.
Anything from, if your hair would be straight, or if you were married, or if you were slimmer, or you're too black for them. I like you, but you're too black for them. So there were a lot of people, or enough people who told me, you know what, if you make it, I still want to talk to you, but right now, I don't really believe in it. I don't think you're going to make it. So now, some of those people, they know who they are. They changed the tune, and very few of them were honest. Like, I didn't believe it. But now that you're in, I'm seeing you're doing well, so that's really good. And keep going,
Yeah.
And others were like, oh, I never said that.
Okay.
I know, you misunderstood.
Oh, really?
No.
Classic.
I never said that. It's all about, people make their own choices. I've also thought of an artist that comes out like, that person's gonna come and go, and they're still around.
It's natural.
It's natural.
Yeah. I guess it's good being an underdog.
Yeah, in a way, because then you have, when something does work, it's somewhat of a victory.
Yeah.
If you come in looking like everything is perfect and everything is fully supported and taken care of, then when one thing goes wrong, Yeah.
But because we met on social media, not met online meeting, I thought, wow, this is an honest person. I thought you just shined out, and how your message, even in Dutch, I was like, okay, this is the person I want to be friends with. Yeah, because you are still holding on to your African identity. Okay, let's start there.
Yeah.
Because you always describe yourself as being Afro-Dutch with Angolan and Congolese ancestry.
Yeah.
Break it down for us. How does your migration story go? If there's things you'd like to share, obviously it must be long.
Well, it's not that long, because I came here as a baby, a cute fat baby, I always say. 7 months old, big cheeks. I saw the pictures of when we arrived. It was very cold. When we arrived, it was, at least my parents felt it was very cold. Apparently it wasn't that cold.
Okay.
It was Dutch summer, but they felt it was cold because of where they're from. My dad is Congolese, my mom is Angolan.
I see.
And So their stories of migration are different.
Okay.
They separated when I was really young.
Here.
Yeah,
Ah.
and even how they got here are different stories. But what was important is for the both of them. It was important that I knew where I came from, because we came here and there was already a black population, which was mostly Caribbean. And it was important for them that I knew my roots. Like some of them were really holding on to where they came from. Like, hey, I'm from Suriname, I'm from Curaçao, etc.
Yeah.
So it was for them important that I also knew what my ancestry was and what my roots are.
Yeah.
You know, my mom always made a point out of saying you're Dutch.
Yeah.
But don't forget that you're also black. You're African. You're Bantu. You're from this and this area.
Bantu.
You know. So yeah, exactly.
Proud Bantu too.
Exactly. So it's not like, oh, you need to feel less than or whatever. It was really a process, I must say, of always checking in.
Okay.
And making sure that I
with who? With your parents or within yourself?
Both, and with the community also.
Oh.
Taking me to weddings, birthdays, other celebrations, but also mourning sessions. Like we mourn for a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And the Dutch mourn. You know, they give you 3 days in work, and so from very young they taught me that is not normal with us, and it's not normal for humans, because when you lose someone that's very dear to you, you need more time to get used to life without that person. So it's things like that, checking in with the community, also going to church. But even church, I had to deconstruct for myself, because
which church?
I went to different churches. So I went on the same weekend. I would go to the Congolese church in the late afternoon. In the morning, I would be in this mixed church that was led by white people. Yeah. And somewhere in between, I would sometimes be at a Ghanaian church. And the Ghanaian church would be for my English. The mixed church would be for my Dutch.
Oh, that's clever.
And then the Congolese church would be for my overall cultural thing.
Oh, I gotta. Amen to that.
I got frustrated at some point. I was like, why did I go to so many churches?
But
different
the
rules.
Advantages that you just laid out.
Yeah, I see them now.
Okay.
Because if I'm around Ghanaian people, they notice that I'm already familiar with Ghanaian people. You know, they ask me like, did you grow up with Ghanaian people? I don't understand. And then I explain to them. You know, from a really young age, I went to the Anglophone church
as well.
That had Ghanaians and Nigerians together. Then they became bigger and they became a Ghanaian and Nigerian church. I continued to the Ghanaian church while going to the other churches.
I see.
But the cultural elements were in there as well. You know, you the whole mourning thing, mourning 6 weeks. 2 to 6 weeks. It's not anywhere in the Bible. It's not something that Europeans do per se. It's really our culture, bringing the food, staying with people all day, bringing your children, having your children play with the mourning children, so they can still be in touch with their childhood instead of just being in the mourning process. So those are things I had to deconstruct for myself to understand the difference between religion and rules and possible Eurocentrism and the cultural aspects that were actually warming and helping and comforting to me.
I think that's clever, and I think that's probably a good tip for all my immigrant friends. That try a little bit of church here, church there, because I'm atheist, so I don't go to any church. But I think that's a good way to connect with people. So, are you spiritual now, or are you religious?
I would say at most spiritual. I say I walk with God, and I say that after or before I say we Africans had God before the white man came to Africa. Yeah. So when I say I walk with God, I don't want any Eurocentric people to feel like, I have one above you because white Jesus is your Jesus, you know, white God is your God. You know? For me, it's more about, even when in the concept of religion and beliefs and spirituality in general. It's about what you do with it. In the continent, it was used to oppress, to take away people's names, take away people's rituals, take away people's feeling of closeness to godliness, and then reintroduce them to this idea of supremacy. And enough people
and classism.
So enough people look at us that way. When we have the same religion, they look at us like, within that religion, you are here, I am there. And I have taken my distance from that a really long time ago, and it was really freeing. But it's also hard to explain sometimes to people. And there's versions of Christianity, like in Congo you have Kimbangista. I'm not a Kimbangist, but Kimbangism says that basically that Jesus was a Bantu person, and God is from that, like the idea of monotheism was born there in the heart of Africa. So from that perspective, the whole religion, the whole idea of God, the whole idea of the afterlife is completely deracialized, actually. You know, because you're Bantu yourself, so you don't. There's no Germanic white-haired God on a cloud.
The lightning thing.
Yeah, it's a completely different. It's a completely different way of dealing with the colonized mind, or actually trying to decolonize the mind somewhat. So I hope I explained the Kimbangisme well. If anyone's watching and they're like, "This is not how it is," then, just let him know. But
it's alright.
But what I find beautiful about that is that because it was born 100 years ago, and that was very colonial time, especially in Congo.
This is in Congo or Angola, because it's
this is in Congo. Yeah, this is in Congo.
Okay.
And and it was actually a very dangerous time to even talk about Afrocentric anything. In Belgium, Congo, they were vicious down there.
Oh gosh. Yeah, I mean, recently you mentioned the Congo. Of course, you're from there. You must have seen Belgium returning, for lack of a better word, the remains of Patrice Lumumba, which is a tooth that somebody was keeping somewhere in Brussels. I can't even wrap my brain around it. Like, what?
The fear of a African body that frees itself, and then gets other people, other Africans, to free themselves, and want for themselves, is a very scary thought for the white supremacists. I think that is what Patrice Lumumba stood for, and died for. And when he was murdered, because that's what it was, they say executed, but I like the word murder more than execution, because then you think of innocent people's lives being stolen from them. And he was the same age as I am now. He was 36, I'm 36.
I see.
So me turning 36 and then thinking about that hits home, because I'm not ready to go.
No. Oh gosh.
So for him to just be taken like that, and then people getting angry, people going into the streets, people still saying his name over 6 years later. It is for the white supremacists of that time. This time, it is scary. So keeping that part of his body in their house, it's like a psychological way of keeping the power in your house, I remember there was this viral TikTok video. I need to find it again. This guy was asked to restore some old colonial looking chair in the States. He opens it up and there was hair, 4C hair and hair and hair and hair. Obviously, where did the hair probably come from? So you have the hair of people you enslaved. in your chair. You're always sitting on their hair.
Wow.
Even though you've already enslaved their bodies, you still have to enslave now or use now the extensions of their bodies.
Wow.
So the tooth thing, there's probably maybe his hair is somewhere, maybe a piece of his leg is somewhere. You know, there's people who really believe in the harnessing of the power of someone's spirit or the enslaving of it by having pieces of their bodies in their house. You have stories of rich people who have people's teeth.
Yeah.
And they have entire things made with people's teeth. You know? So that idea, when I mean you're Bantu, you're from which?
Oh, Zimbabwe.
Zimbabwe. So you know that with the muti and everything, they always talk about using people's stuff to do harm and things like that. And a lot of things are just nonsensical stories.
Absolute nonsense.
You know, absolute nonsense. But the idea of it, it's real for people of all kinds of colors, all kinds of backgrounds.
And people don't talk about that.
No, because that tooth wasn't in a Zimbabwean house.
No.
It wasn't somewhere in Congo. So it wasn't used for ritual somewhere in Kenya. It was deep in Europe. You know?
Like, hold up.
So the idea of using African, but pieces of African bodies, you have stories of people being eaten in the United States, enslaved Africans being murdered, and then pieces of them being eaten, because that made them feel more powerful. That idea and that fear, together with disgust, together with systems and mechanisms of oppression, those are things that got me actually I believe, out of a colonized mindset.
Oh, okay. Because you are a political scientist.
Yeah.
So how does that work? You went to school for it, and most people didn't know when you were going to the election that you got some smarts up in here. You are not just a cute face with nice nails. I know your nails make people like, oh, you have interesting nails. Like, yes, how's she doing?
How's she doing?
You're gonna bring in some color the parliament, color the council, color the whole of the Netherlands.
Oh,
bring
wow, thank you, prophesize.
Bring it.
Yeah, no, how did that work? And first of all, the political science study is, when I started it, was very Eurocentric. So the idea of a working democracy, an idea of a working government was very focused on Europe, and Europe, especially the Netherlands, being perfect examples of how to do things.
Okay.
Without mentioning the colonial history and the transatlantic slave trade that financially fed all of this and made all of this possible. So that was frustrating to me.
Okay.
I also wanted to pass, so I didn't start fighting about it right away. But eventually I started having discussions about it, and I didn't win all of them.
Yeah.
But I did realize that in order to find a way into having a working governments back home, certain things need to be decoupled.
Yeah.
Because by learning about what was going on here and what was connected to the EU from the continent, I also learned that a lot of systems in the countries we're from are very based on what the colonizer left.
Yes.
And
Absolutely.
without it even fitting you. And if you know the history of the European countries here, you know that their systems are based on, are connected to their ethnic backgrounds, their ancestral ways of doing things. So their ways of governing now naturally flowed from evolving as a people. And then comparing that to, you have your own kingdoms, you have your own systems, and something is imposed on you. Of course you're gonna have kinks and things that don't work. So that is where I was like, okay, at some point I would love to have the opportunity to work on a project or something where the new generation back home
Yeah.
can find ways to combine what we're used to, the whole, a chief
Yeah.
system, chiefdom system, compared to more modern systems, but then
Parliamentaries.
yes, but then in a way that's more representative.
Yeah.
And that's what I like about the Dutch system, that it's a tiny country where you have all these parties
Yeah.
that give voices to all these diverse groups.
Yeah.
And Africa is the most diverse place on earth. So that's definitely a place where you would kind of need the same, but then more in touch with whatever is going on in the area.
Ground.
Yeah.
I've found it interesting because you brought it up that the Dutch system is quite representative. And I'm like, oh, maybe that's what we're missing in Africa, because it's like winner takes it all. You just grab and you grab everything, and the other people are just left stranded.
No, it's also who the colonizer it was. I mean, the British have the winner takes it all mentality in their own country, and they kind of left that everywhere they went. The French do that as well. The Belgians have their little ethnic war going on with the Flemish and the Wallonians, Walloons. Walloons, I believe, in English, and so they tried to put that in Congo, but that didn't really, in Rwanda, with the element of taking one and putting that one above the other.
Yeah.
That doesn't really work, so...
without taking into account our pre-existing kingdoms.
Yes, that had a mutual understanding.
Yeah.
Instead of one being superior over the other.
Yeah.
And helped by outside forces to stay that way. So, yeah, that's the thing. Like, if you wanted to make it really representative, you have to take into account what is going on. If you would take Congo is like a subcontinent. It has many.
So
it's so large. It has over 250 ethnic groups. It's you had several kingdoms in that area, pre-colonial time. Several kingdoms in that area that had trade routes with each other or other arrangements, but they didn't necessarily get into each other's space.
I see.
Let alone being scrambled and having to share a territory together.
An entire big border for that.
Yeah, and some don't have a lot to do with each other. You have, for instance, the ethnic group my father is from.
I was about to ask that actually.
He's Luba. Luba, very patriarchic. They had a long history of kingdoms. There are sources that based on our archaeology say that the first Luba people were there around the year 1000 or 1100. There's griots, with stories they go back about 800 years. And
your mom?
And my mom is from the Congo Kingdom.
Oh, the Congo Kingdom.
Yeah, the Congo Kingdom was in the area of northern Angola, a good part of Congo Brazil, and a good part of western Congo. But not the entire thing, just a good part.
Around the river.
Around the river, yes. And in its heyday, it went all the way to South Cameroon, by the way. The Congo Kingdom. There's even proof of that in languages that are still spoken.
Oh, that's nice.
But by the time the Portuguese came, they were in decline.
Yeah.
And they weren't at that level anymore.
Nice.
So they are matriarchal. They've had more than one queen. The princess warriors. Female councillors.
Oh, that's cool.
Which is something that was uncalled for in my father's ethnic group.
Yeah.
So me being in politics, some cousins of my dad had to, they weren't surprised because my dad always stood up for me being, standing up.
Because you won the BBC public speaking competition 2 decades ago, so would you say you had a bit of a mouth?
I think it's being challenged. You know, I had one uncle who I don't remember how old I was, but I was a teenager. Yeah. They were talking British politics. I sat next to them, and I continued talking with them. And one uncle was not a brother of my dad, was a cousin of my dad, very conservative. Said, "You're a girl, you cannot sit there. Your brother can sit here."
Here in the Netherlands, or you were home?
In the UK.
Oh, in the UK.
You cannot sit here. You're a girl. Your brother can sit here. You cannot sit here.
And you were like, nah.
No, I looked at my dad,
okay.
And my dad stood up for me.
Okay.
He said, "She's the best child to speak on politics that I have."
Oh wow.
So she's gonna sit here, and I am older than you. Wow. You know the whole culture thing.
Hierarchy.
Yes. So you will accept her, and and after that, whenever there was something, and they were sitting talking about politics, that one uncle would scoot so I could sit and talk with them.
Yep. Oh.
So that's how that went. You know, my family, even the ones that don't agree with women speaking up and whatever, they knew at some point something will happen and she will be in politics.
Yeah. Were you an only child or you have siblings?
No, I have siblings. Okay. I'm the oldest of 5. And I have 2 sisters and then 2 brothers. Okay. And I must say the sisters were all in our own way. We're all outspoken, and it's also motivated by our aunties. Like on one hand, their culture, my father's ethnic group culture, patriarchy, or women are supposed to submit to men, etc. But I've noticed in that same culture, the women are raised to really be able to stand on their own. So I concluded the women are only trained to be submitted to women of their own tribe. You know, that's my conclusion. They will not agree, I think, but my conclusion was that it's a very communal thing. Yeah. And because all my aunties, they're not afraid to speak. Yes. You know, I always said, you say in our culture, women this, but my grandmother, my aunties.
Grandma.
Yeah, and everyone, they're not afraid to. They don't have a fear of speaking on what they believe in. You know, and with husband there, without husband there. Yeah.
So have you been back to both either Angola or Congo to see, maybe, I don't know, to have your own eyewitness experience of what's it like?
So only as a child, Angola, the Congo question was several times that I wanted to go, and there was some serious military action going on.
My country was involved. I have to hang my head in shame.
You mean the Great African War?
Zimbabwe, like in the 1999. Zimbabwe was grabbing all the diamonds.
It was not just it was a lot. It was like 9 countries at the same time, and I remember my parents, my uncles, aunties, they had like meetings or conversations with us about forgiveness and understanding and things like that. Yeah. So we wouldn't harbor hatred to all the people from the countries who are involved. Because it was just too much. Yeah. It was an attack from so many countries at the same time for different interests, mostly resources. And it was just a process. I don't know if every family did this though, because I know Congolese people have like issues with people from different countries because of that time. But you have to understand also how neo-colonial the situation was. Yeah. The European, the American powers behind the countries attacking, supporting, etc. It wasn't. They call it the Great African War, but I had the nerve to call it the neo-colonial African War.
I have to agree.
But it's not something that's often spoken about. And it's in the aftermath of what happened in Rwanda, which also was because of colonial and neo-colonial powers behind it. Not to take blame away from people who actually did the murdering, did the killing. Absolutely not. People are responsible for themselves. Yeah. But just like with the Second World War, we tried to see the entire picture and look at the whole thing. Yeah. we talk about Germany, but we also talk about Austria. We also talk about
Yugoslavia.
yeah, we have Poland, the Dutch. You know, we try not to just focus on Hitler and his friends, and try to see the entire thing. So when it comes to African conflicts, we have to try and do the same. Otherwise, it becomes a demonization of Africans.
Oh yeah. I mean, look, the ongoing battle for the heart and the soul of Congo. You know, it's so tragic. You see, you know, like each time everybody uses a cell phone, you're like, oh wow, it has a piece of Congo in it.
Absolutely.
And it seems like something that's just never gonna end. The Forgotten War. There's an upcoming book. Unfortunately, I've forgotten the title. It's written by a Congolese saying the Forgotten War. It should be out soon. Is there a strong Congolese community here in the Netherlands?
In Europe, I would say in Europe.
In general.
In the Netherlands, I would not call it that per se. We know each other. When there's funerals and stuff like that, people see each other.
Okay.
But I think it needs to be watched from a European perspective, because the community is larger in Belgium, larger in France, larger in the UK.
Yeah, naturally, by language.
Yes. And also in economic power. So if something really needs to happen, then you need the people, like the population of those areas, to stand up, and the Dutch Congolese will just be pulled and part of it. But yeah, when it comes to the hashtag Congo is bleeding, the whole conversation keeps coming back. I mean, 15 years ago or so, Ben Affleck went on this sort of Congo is bleeding tour. He didn't call it Congo is bleeding, but it was about the same issue. It keeps coming back. Okay. Sometimes there's famous people who speak on it. They go to the UN.
Yeah.
But the large issue is there is so much demand for that cheap ore.
Yeah.
The cheap cobalt, the cheap coltan, so the phones work.
Yeah.
And the Congo government, though I'm sure there's a lot of people there that try their best to be able to fight off over 200 companies, and not just companies like you know, here they call it a Monsac, like you're one person and you have a little company.
A bag, yeah.
No, these are MNCs. These are multinational companies with millions, billions of euros to their disposal, private armies, and to be able to fight them
in
off.
Actual countries.
Yes, in actual countries, and to be able to fight them off and say, we want a fair price before you take this stuff out of our country. We don't want children to be going into mines. Yes, and contracted workers who are really worked to death.
Yeah.
We want good environments for them. It's really tough.
Yeah.
It's really tough. There's a lot of corruption, and there's a lot of organizations that try their best to try and do something about this.
Yeah.
But there's so much money to be made.
Yeah.
It's really, the question is really, how will it be fixed? Because you don't have just this. You have the, like you said, the diamonds. You still have diamonds in Congo. There's a whole story about that. You still have gold in Congo. There's a whole thing about that. You have the wood. I mean, there's so much to get
in one area,
in one country. There's so much, so many parties that will fight to the death for the money that they can make over there than the animals. So
it's quite something.
It's quite something, and I don't live in Congo. I don't visit. So for me, it's just part of my heritage, it's part of my roots, and I want my family that's still there to have a better life, and the people who are still there to have a better life, to be able to for all the riches to be in your country, to able to have a better life in that country. It needs to somehow trickle down to the people.
Yeah.
And we've seen in history, things don't trickle down to people unless it's forced.
Yeah.
The people making the most money don't just share it.
Oh, never. We see Sri Lanka, the people storming the president's palace.
They set a house, the palace on fire. Which is not something I wish upon the president in Congo or a minister or something.
Yeah.
But it is a question of how much do the people who have it even care about the people they're trampling.
Speaking of that, as a black politician in the Netherlands, and I was speaking to somebody a few weeks ago, and I suppose it's a view that's shared by a lot of African and by extension black people in many parts of the world, that politics is not working. I don't necessarily think it's not working. I think our people have to elevate our knowledge of electoral processes.
Absolutely.
What do you have to say? For example, you represent the Zuidoost, right?
I represent people all over the city.
All over the city.
Okay,
Oh,
so I'm in the city council for the whole of Amsterdam.
For the whole of Amsterdam.
But Southeast stepped up for Carla. You know, people in Southeast, they had lots of options.
Yeah.
And a lot of people were like, I'm picking her. After that, also,
shout out to the Amsterdam Zuidoost.
Also,
the Southeast in
Southeast,
English.
Also people in Amsterdam South. And people in the city center. So people, it's a bit spread around the city, but it starts at Southeast, and then South, and then center. That's where my votes came from.
Oh, that's nice.
But I am very, very grateful, very, very grateful for the people who voted in Southeast, especially the ones who never voted before. Because that means that you had to step over some preconceived notions, maybe a lot of disappointment, to even go to the booth.
Yeah. Time.
And then you took the little pen, and then you colored the my name, and then you went home. Those are all decisions. And to be able to step over, because a lot of people of color have been very disappointed by the political system, but also by people who just work in the council. Because yes, we need to know about the processes, but if you don't know that much about the process, the person helping you in the counter, in the city council, to you is a representative of the political system. And
that's good.
And if they mess up your dossier, they lose your documents, they tell you, oh, you don't have the right to this, and then 2 years later you find out you should have gotten it, and problems would have been solved. After
and
that,
then the politician comes in and says,
vote for me and I'll help you. I understand that you're like, oh, help me, your friends just messed me up. I'm not helping you. And it's not a secret that people of color have run to more into more institutionalized racism issues than other institutional issues with white people. You know, so, and for the people who are not very busy with political processes, local politics and national politics is all the same thing.
It's all the same.
So the tax office messes you up, politicians messed you up. Period. Local, national, you don't care. And I see it as our responsibility as politicians to take these concerns as feedback and do something about it. I do feel like if you do understand the process and you're complaining, so you do understand that if you vote now and you're one of the 5,000 who voted for me, I'm inside, and you don't vote, and you complain, then I'm like, what are you complaining about? You know how it works, but you're complaining why? No, but I don't believe if you don't believe in, then don't believe in the power of complaint either.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But if you don't know how it works, there's a difference. If you don't know how it works, you've been disappointed, you've been hurt, you're very busy, there's inflation right now.
Oh gosh.
You're working 40 hours and you can't make ends meet. You don't have time to watch my little old maiden speech about blah blah. You know, you want solutions now.
Pronto. Yeah.
You know, and then for the people in that position, I feel like we need to go to you. So sometimes I go to Southeast.
Yeah.
There's an evening or there's an afternoon where people come together to just voice their opinion and about issues in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And then I just sit there and I just listen, you know, and I make sure that I'm coming in the back. I don't draw too much attention. I sit there and listen. And afterwards, people come to me, hey, aren't you the...
Yeah.
You know, but you've already spoken freely.
Yeah.
So now I can bring it back to the council and try to do something with it. You know?
Are young people coming in though? Because I think that's always the biggest issue with the electorate, that young people, we are somewhat apathetic to the voting and the participation processes of it.
Depends. I've seen that young people
Of color in particular.
yeah, but young people are motivated to participate in more theoretical levels of education
Okay.
than practical levels of education.
I see.
So the kids, you have a system here. You have the secondary school system, which is roughly divided in 3 levels, and the lowest level is divided in 4 levels inside.
Oh.
Right? The highest level gives you automatic access to university. The middle level, half of, gives you access to theoretical education that does produce bachelors, but isn't a university. Yeah, and then the level below that, they call it below, but I'll say the practical level. That's called FMBO. That has 4 levels inside. That's the level where I've noticed that the kids aren't as motivated to be busy with politics. That is connected after they're 16. That's connected to further education called MBO, which is more practical than theoretical, and the same thing. And it has to do with a lot. It has to do with people higher up who decide what is given to what level of education. What do they believe that those children can handle in their brains?
Oh gosh.
So it's not the children's fault.
I see.
You know, they're not in a environment where it's the norm. That teachers believe that they are going to be interested. So a focus on that is minimal.
I see.
But most people go to the practical level of education. Most children of color even more. So the children of color are often exposed to this more than the environment where you're constantly told, okay, what's your argument? What's your feedback? Give me your feedback. Did you watch the news? Did you watch what's going on with Mark Rutte? Did you see what that level of education? It's almost a conscious choice if you don't want to be politically involved, because you're constantly
checking out.
Checked, and you have exam questions about it. So when I was doing the elections, I noticed this in the kids that came to me and the kids that I addressed. And I told them it's our responsibility to do something about that. So one of us, of Bain, she did a process, a sort of project with kids of the practical level of education and debates and stuff like that.
That's cool.
With actual politicians. And I believe that needs to be done more about subjects that interest them. So if you're going to a fashion school, an MBO fashion school,
bring it in.
They might say, hey, we don't have enough materials for our project, or they told us we cannot use this and this material because of budget cuts, but wedding dresses are made with that material. I cannot practice making wedding dresses without it, you know. So now you can have a debate on who decides these budgets, and that's politics, you know. And then it becomes feasible to them.
Yeah.
Don't go to them and tell them, oh, we're gonna have a debate about fishing. You know, it should or should you
or
not
housing.
fish? Or housing is possible.
It's possible, okay.
But depends on what question about housing. They're 16. Debate on housing prices and buying is not relevant to a 16-year-old. You know, it's relevant to maybe 20, maybe 25.
Plus, yeah.
You know, but student housing, yes.
Because the teenager is right there. Just
about to leave, about to maybe travel, and there's a housing crisis, so they don't know what to do. So and another thing is bringing these things to our people outside of election time.
Outside of election time. Well, that brings me to the point. There was, I think it's the Holland Tribune. I've forgotten the specific title. The magazine by KLM, and they drew a map of Amsterdam, and the Zuidoost, the southeast, was completely not put there. As a councillor, who obviously I'm sure you have to represent people of color, what is in your vision? Obviously, there's this Zuidoost renewal that's happening. I also read a young journalist, I think it was last year, and he was describing growing up in the Zuidoost. I know you grew up, you stayed there, maybe not grew up there or stayed there at some point.
Yeah, I lived there, yeah.
You lived there, and you know, his pain of all the problems in the Zuid, it was so palpable. Diana Frifa were writing for, I think it was the Parole, and it really struck me that, wow, it's really that, it has been that deep for people. Was it that bad for you as well, or?
Well, I came to live in Southeast as an adult, a young adult, but an adult.
Okay, so you were grown.
So I was grown. So there are certain issues that, as a child, that you go through as a child, that I didn't go through inside Oost. I saw them and went through them in The Hague. I grew up in The Hague in the Schilderswijk, which was in the 90s was a notorious neighborhood.
I see.
With lots of problems. And my aunt actually lived in Southeast when I was a preteen, I think from age 9, 10-ish till about 15, 16. She lived in Amsterdam, and from 10 to 13, 14, she lived in Southeast in the K neighborhood. Back when the K neighborhood had a lot of issues, and my cousins sometimes ran into those issues. I would go over there every other weekend. You know, for those watching who don't know, at least Bantu Africans, your cousins are your siblings, right?
Period.
Okay. So me being there all the time was just, you know, my aunt just had 4 kids instead of 3.
Yeah.
That's the idea. So my cousins would tell me everything. I would tell them everything I saw over there. Yeah. They would tell me everything, and sometimes we would run into different issues. So when people write about what they saw, I recognize it because even though I was a visitor, I was also, you know, in our language you say yaya, that's the eldest. You know, I was yaya of my cousins. So whatever they didn't have the nerve to tell mom and dad, they come to you. And we saw some very challenging things from kids who had a parent who was drug addicted, but everyone was keeping silent, otherwise all the children would be taken away. You know, so you know, stuff like that. Like you see it, but you don't see it. Like your aunt is giving a bag of clothes or a bag of food to this teenage kid, so the teenage kid can take care of the siblings. Because the parent, it's not going well. But if they would go to child services, all the children would be gone. So things like that, like very dire situations, right there in the flats. So that also put in perspective how prosperous this country is. You know, on TV it would be like prosperous, going well, economy's going well, and then you sit there and you see that and you're like,
An entire district.
you're like, no, that's not correct. And when I came to live there years later, I came to live in the port, which is near the Belmar Arena station.
Yeah.
As a young adult, and I came there to come home because even though there were problems in Southeast, when my auntie was living there, I did feel like, yeah, everyone was black and it felt nice. So it's.
I stayed there with the host family for I think a couple of months.
Yeah.
I loved it.
Yeah.
I loved it, and it's all thanks to my Nigerian and South African friends who were like, "Don't read what you see in the newspaper, please experience it for yourself."
Yeah. I mean, you had problems, yes, but again, like I said, the neighborhood I lived in, I believe was worse than the neighborhood my auntie lived in Southeast at the time. It's just that there were way more black people in my auntie's neighborhood. But yeah, I think it was worse where I lived. Because I lived there, I knew how bad it was. But yeah, I went to live there and I came home. It was for me. I had been in a student facility before.
Yeah.
Sea container homes. I don't know if you know the concept of like a banana container turned into a home. Yeah, so there were 1,000 of them near Amstel Station, and I was living in one of them for 4 or 5 years. And there was a lot going on there. Like it was great. My first apartment, yay, everything was mine. But a lot of the kids, there was like this system. If you studied in Amsterdam and you lived like X amount of kilometers away from the university, then you had an upper hand in getting one of those apartments. So I lived at the time all the way in Zoetermeer, which is out just 15 minutes outside of The Hague, for a brief time, with my mom and my new stepdad at the time. So I was far enough to be ahead on the list. But with me, there were a lot of kids of rural areas like Brabant, Limburg, Drenthe, Groningen, far away, right? Very, very non-diverse areas.
I stayed in Limburg for a couple of years.
Yeah, how was that?
It was actually interesting. It was nice though. It wasn't as bad as people would be like, oh my god. Because I would come up to Amsterdam and I would say I stay in Limburg and people would be like, oh Limburg. It was as if I stayed in another country.
Yeah. And they would feel sorry for you.
Oh, they would feel sorry. Oh, you stay with the people who speak funny Dutch. Oh, Limburg people like this. But it was actually nice though. Yeah, I'll tell you an interesting story. I stayed in Bake. And Bake in Zimbabwe, in my city of Bulawayo, our neighborhood, we call it Vanbegi, which is like our own Bantunization, because the area used to be owned by a farmer who was called Vanbegi. Clearly came from Beg. And I was like, what is my life? To be able to move from there to here and it's still Beg.
Yes.
So, but it was, the people were warmer than people in the north, which is an interesting dynamic.
It is interesting, but that there is a difference. I think my experience with the kids from these areas, of the non-diverse areas, the kids were fine-ish, but their parents, when they came to visit, I don't know what they were told by their kids, but they came in and there was this recurring thing where parents would follow me on the stairs or to my apartment, asking me if I lived there. Asking me to just show my key if I lived there. Oh no. Yes, the Karen situation. It would happen very often. I want to say every 2 weeks or so. I would run into one of those parents. So for me, moving to Southeast was coming home. Nobody's gonna follow me to the door and ask me, "Do you live here? Do you live here? Do you really live here?" It was very, very troubling. That aspect of it was very troubling because I knew it was happening because I'm dark skinned. You know.
I will ask that actually, and it should have been my first question, but we spoke a lot about Africa, which I loved. What is, in your view, what's the state of Afropea? You know, Afropeans.
I don't know. Is there like a Euro-Africa in South Africa among the white Africans? No, they try to recreate a new. I mean, the Afrikaners try to kind of recreate a new type of old Dutch in a new area.
Secluded.
Yes, and it's segregated racially, also, you know, genetically. So when I look at that and I look at us here, I feel like we're better integrators.
Okay.
Some of us live here a couple of years and then we get married with a local Dutch person, not a Dutch person who lived back home and loves it there. No, just someone from here who loves it here, and adjust, learn the language, all of that. And I feel like the idea of Afropea is more a concept, like a theoretical concept, to feel at home somewhere. Because, for instance, you were born here from an African and a European parents. Or you were born here from African parents, but you grew up in Big. All your friends are white. You don't really know your own language. You kind of struggle with this. You kind of struggle with that. So you want this own carved out identity, and that helps you. I believe the term.
Interestingly. Oh, I was about to go there. Yes, please. The term
Afropean or Afropea. I think it was. Mama came with it, and she is of mixed heritage, and she explained it as such, even though she has actually been back home several times.
I didn't know that.
So she actually, so she gets
crisscrosses. Because for context, mixed race children of Belgian heritage, they're still being denied history or any information about how they ended up in Belgium.
Right, you mean the stolen kids?
The stolen
kids. Yes. So that is because there was shame in even creating them, because that meant that Belgian men wanted African women. So the proof of that needed to be extracted, then scrambled around, so nobody could know which Belgian man actually did it. And then their white supremacy could be stay intact. That's what I mean with, you know, the presence of the black body and what that can do, and wanting to erase and wanting to harness. That's what, because these were children, these were babies taken away from their parents. Imagine you have your baby and then you have to hide your baby, your crying baby.
Trevor Noah. It's a good book. You have to read Born a Crime.
Because otherwise they're gonna take you.
It's evidence. I love how it described, and I had never thought of it that way. Like, oh my God, you can actually be born a crime.
Yes, because your evidence of someone not segregating their bodies from the race that should be segregated from. So the issue of the les enfants métis, and how long it took them to even know their stories, and some of them were able to find their mom. But most of them didn't.
I can imagine. It's been so long.
But people also passed away.
People passed away.
So thank goodness for DNA. You know, you can, if you think you're one of them and you have any idea where it might be, you can go to a village with DNA. They can pinpoint, okay, this is your auntie, this is your uncle. So we can pinpoint your mother to be this person. You know? But it's a very painful history, and a lot of that has happened outside of that. And with Angola, it's even there's more, but a lot of it is concealed.
Gosh, I find that the Portuguese were even more aggressive. With what happened in Angola and Mozambique, you know, Bantu history in those two countries.
Mm-hmm.
So from your Angolan lineage, which tribe is your mom from?
From Congo,
you say Congo, by
the
the way.
Congo Kingdom is from the Congo
It cuts
tribe, ethnic group.
both Congo
Yes,
and Angola.
and inside I'm from the Nzinga clan,
Oh.
which is the political clan,
Mm-hmm.
which underlines again what I'm doing.
Gotta
Yeah.
speak.
Yeah. So yeah, you have on one hand the Portuguese really tried to erase. They really did. On the other hand, they couldn't because first of all, they wrote a lot about our history when they were still doing business instead of.
Or we kicked them out in my area.
Yeah, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
But in what is called Angola now was different kingdoms.
So different.
So they took over this one, they pitted this one against that one. You know how that goes.
Yeah.
But they couldn't erase all the history. They just didn't allow people to focus on that for survival.
Yeah.
So instead of being like, oh, in your villages you cannot talk about your ethnic group, they didn't care about the villages. They're like, if you want to make money, your Portuguese has to sound like someone from Portugal.
Yeah.
At home you only speak Portuguese.
Yeah.
Your children don't learn anything but Portuguese. That is how the erasure happened.
Interesting point with that about language. I have other Black Dutch friends of mine, and they also advocate in the language sector. I'm not well familiar with it, but I do know that a lot of Black Dutchies struggle with the language. What's your take on that, based on how, I suppose, the people from the South Coast, they do have challenges with that type of integration, with having that high level of Dutch, because sometimes I do hear Black Dutchies and I'm like, okay, I'm struggling with hearing this Dutch.
I think there is a difference between the Dutch that is accepted as legitimate, authentic Dutch, which is also the Dutch from Limburg. I mean, they will say, oh, it's funny Dutch. But they do consider it Dutch.
Nonetheless.
An accent of Dutch, an accepted accent of Dutch. While if you speak Dutch like someone from Southeast, who grew up there with the different local words and stuff like that, it's considered...
It's a problem.
Yes. You might be considered to be less educated or considered to have a smaller vocabulary because you're judged on an ethnic basis.
Thank you for pointing that out.
You're not necessarily... It's still a legitimate version of Dutch because it's a level of Dutch that happens in the Netherlands, but it has a color to it. They hear...
Thank you for pointing that out.
They hear a color.
They hear a color.
They hear a color, and that's where the judgment is worse.
I understand.
And what I want to see, and many with me who have been doing things in Southeast and stuff like that, I want to see employers who speak Dutch like that, who grew up in Southeast, who employ other people who speak the same way, and then have a basis outside of Southeast.
Absolutely. In
the city center, in the north, in something like just bring it in and make it the norm. Not that people who don't speak like the way Southeast are discriminated against, but that it's your business. So in your house, they will recognize. That's what I want to see more. That's what I think is needed more. Outside of people who, when they're a manager or whatever, they don't judge people for it. Because this is Amsterdam. Enough people understand. They're like, you know what? I understand what you're saying. It's fine. You can work here. It's fine. But that's just a manager. If that manager's gone and some stuck-up person comes in, then they start getting rid of people again. So you get the cycle. That's why I want to see more. I as someone from Bahrain, it's not the most popular thing to hear from Bahrain, but as someone from Bahrain, I've said it numerous times, Black employership is paramount to black excellence.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you have to have black capitalism.
Mm-hmm.
It just means that you're in charge of who is hired and the direction of a business. And that doesn't have to be exploitative.
Yeah.
But it can definitely be supportive. So.
Said it best. Well, to wrap up, just one last point. The red light, which is the new red light district, which is being planned for the southeast.
No.
Obviously, no, simple. No,
No,
that's my opinion as well.
We've
No.
done the protests. We've done the speaking in. I've had the conversations behind closed doors. Not only is it a no,
Mm-hmm.
Southeast said no. There was a
Mhm.
whole petition.
Mm-hmm.
Southeast doesn't have to explain
No.
why.
Why?
There's other locations where it can go.
Mm-hmm.
There were 8 locations presented. 2 of them in Southeast.
Yeah.
That leaves 6. Okay, if the other 6 say no, Southeast even still says no.
Yeah.
So my hope
Mm-hmm.
is that if that is overturned somehow,
Mm-hmm.
people will get up again
Mm-hmm.
and do everything they can so that doesn't happen. Why? Because Southeast is working on other areas that need improvement in Southeast
Yeah.
in their own way.
Mm-hmm.
And there's this large fear that if this is accepted, other things will be accepted that challenge the possible progress or the possible safety.
Yeah.
Also, it's the whole question of if it's in Southeast, will it be protected and guarded the same way as it would be in the city center, or will that become iffy because it's Southeast?
Mm-hmm. Already there's the frisking thing going on.
The frisking thing I have a problem with. You mean the
Stop and search.
stop and search that's coming back? I have a problem with it being in Southeast because of how it stigmatizes the area.
Mm-hmm.
I understand that it was chosen because of incidents happening in Southeast of violence.
Yeah.
But then again, if you are going to do this only in Southeast, you are bound to stop and frisk a lot of black people.
A lot of black people. Yeah.
And then you can say a lot of black people were stopped, or a lot of people were frisked, or a lot of black people had weapons.
Mm-hmm.
And there's the other element
Mm-hmm.
that 1,000 hours of stopping and frisking already happened
Mm-hmm.
in this way, and no guns were found. If knives were found, it was the small fruit knife kitchen type.
Kitchen type.
And people's tools for their work. So what exactly are you trying to prove?
Mm-hmm.
I understand that there's an underlying issue
Mm-hmm.
in Southeast that they're trying to tackle as well, which is the knife crime.
Or how about lack of resources?
Yes, but indeed,
Yeah.
we believe that issues like that come from lack of resources, but also come from multifaceted issues
Mm-hmm.
that have a social economic root.
Yeah.
More than just kids running around having knives.
Mm-hmm.
And if you take them away, then they won't have knives.
Mm-hmm.
That's not how it works.
Mhm.
We have social media, we have Snapchat. These kids literally see one friend's frisk in one corner.
Mm-hmm.
The entire school knows there's stop and frisk over there.
Over there.
Everyone that had a knife doesn't have one by the time they're at that corner. We've known this to be true. So the issue isn't, oh, you have to stop and frisk them. The issue is you have to get to the root of why these kids even have knives.
Yeah.
And some of them have knives because other kids have knives.
Mm-hmm.
Why do the other kids have knives? Oh, then they want to point to the music, or they want to point. No. You have to go deeper.
Deeper.
What's going on with these children?
Yeah.
Some of these kids have knives at 11.
Oh gosh.
What's going on with that 11-year-old?
Yeah.
If you see that 11-year-old doesn't have resources in the house to do anything else but go to school and, while out in the streets after school,
Mm-hmm.
and whatever is offered in the streets,
Mm-hmm.
including an idea of carrying a knife, that's what the child is going to do, then you need to do something about what those kids are able to do for fun or do for development in that area.
Yeah.
I've said it during an election time as well. You've taken a lot of youth places away where kids actually wanted to be at. A lot of places that are supposed to be places where youth can be are now places where elderly men are playing, checkers. So you need to find a way to connect with those kids, and you already have that. You have youth workers who know perfectly well how to speak to those kids.
Yeah.
But you don't pay them adequately so they can do their job to the best of their ability. And they have to do it for free, and they get overworked. All of that. Same with social workers, overworked. Sometimes they're doing the work of God, but they're doing a lot of it extra for free because under pressure because they're just not adequately helped, because you quantify help by monetary return, and if you do that with children, you won't find the return now.
No.
If you're helping an 11-year-old to not go into a life of crime, instead becoming, I don't know, that employer,
employer,
at 25, then it will come back 14 years later at 25. Maybe by way of the child not being in the system in between, you're also getting it back. But because we're not looking at the social capital of helping and delivering those resources adequately, we're sometimes, or at least the people who are able to change this, sometimes miss the mark, putting it on the parents and everything. Like, I don't care how amazing your child is. Put them in an area where there's no resources, you won't get the same results as where there are resources.
Definitely not.
So these are kids. I'm a parent myself. I have a 7-year-old. She's growing up differently than some of her cousins, and because of that, you see a difference in how they stand in life, how they look at things. And these are kids. Switch them, you probably would have had the same result. It's not about the child's being born not wanting to do anything. A lot of these kids are very bright, very creative, very capable of making something out of nothing. So it's not. It's really about offering these kids a chance beyond whatever failures of the environment.
I agree with that.
And
that's brilliant.
But that comes from, I think some of us speak from a place of love for those kids, and others speak from a place of loyalty to the system. And
it's not gonna work.
Sometimes you gotta let go of a little bit of the one to be able to service the other.
So what do you have to say to kids? I come from the Oprah Winfrey school of having someone you see, someone who looks like you in a space, taking that space, owning it with all of Carla Kabamba glory, owning a space. What would you like to share with them in finding themselves in this world?
You will make mistakes. That's human. However, try to learn from other people's mistakes. You'll come across people who look like what you're going to look like if you don't avoid what they did. On the other hand, there are things that you want that might look out of reach. You might have a teacher who tells you all the time, you're never going to be what you want. Understand there's 40-year-old people who don't know what they want to be. So if you really know what you want to be, you're already really special. And now you just need to connect to other people who are maybe already there. You can be like an intern. You can intern in the summer for free. You can shadow someone. That means that you walk around, you learn, you take notes, you help them out with things. And you really learn what it is to actually be what it is that you want to be. And you find out if what you want to be is actually what you want to be, or maybe it's an element of that you want to be, and then you become something else. For instance, a friend of mine, when we were younger, wanted to be a surgeon. what he actually wanted to do is he wanted to be able to help people become better. It's at something that he was passionate about. So those are two different things. He found out that being a surgeon wasn't actually his way, but being someone who I would call a kingmaker, someone who stands behind you and motivates you and pushes you in the right direction so you can become a professional in what you want to become, like a mentor, like a coach. That's what ended up being what that person wanted to be. And a surgeon fixes people's bodies so they are better. So the element of what he wanted to be is still there. So because of shadowing a surgeon, walking around in a hospital for a couple of weeks, seeing how they live, he realized what the element was that he was really looking for as a teenager. So that's what I want to give you. Like, don't listen to the people who tell you you cannot be X, Y, and Z. Figure out how to become it. So whatever is necessary, and then find someone who is that, who you will, when you're young, follow around for free. I'm open to having to being shadowed as well. And understand that, you know, it's just like some movies. You see someone being a big star, and then I recommend watching the Tina Turner movie. You see someone being a big star, like Tina Turner, and then you watch her being in a cotton field, you watch her going through all kinds of mess. She goes through this whole process to get where she wants to be. So where you want to get to, it might not be the easiest road. If you want,
not overnight.
Not overnight. And easy is probably, the things that will come easy are probably the things that are not the things that will make you really, really happy anyway. So you do the work to figure out what it is, and if you're not sure and you're 17, figure out what it is. If you live, travel, make friends outside of your neighborhood, outside of your city, think outside of the box. If you were raised with one religion, find out a whole lot of information about a completely different religion, so you understand that the world is made up of people who think completely different things, and it will get you to new ideas, and you will get to know yourself better and find your happiness. So
that's brilliant. And just one last thing, maybe for people who may not know grassroots organizations to reach, if somebody, let's say someone just stumbled upon this podcast or YouTube and says, oh, but who do I shadow? Where do I go? Do you have any tips or leads?
Well, it depends on what you need. If you just want more information about Black history or Black people in the Netherlands, I must say, you could go to Black Archives. You could talk to people there. They have expositions, so you can go over there and look at things and have conversations. And when it comes to political party, you can come to us by AIM. We also have a youth department, so you can connect with them there.
I should be coming soon.
When it comes to the discrimination in the Netherlands and research about that, I would recommend Control-Alt-Delete.
Control-Alt-Delete.
If you're a girl or a woman and you want to be in politics but you don't know how to start, I would contact Stem op een Vrouw. That's an organization focused on having more women in politics. And yeah, I would also just go to things, if it's Amsterdam, right? Go to things at Pakhuis de Zwijger, De Rode Hoed, places like that. Talk there to people. Most people there are older than 25. So when you walk around being young, you really you're really noticed. You're really noticeable, and people like young people, so they start talking to you and start asking you questions, and just understand that a lot of people are vain.
Okay.
Yeah. So you tickle them a little bit. You give them some compliments. Make sure you do your homework. When you go over to a debate or something like that, and there's people on the panel talking, do your homework on who's on stage. If anyone is inspirational to you, make sure you know who they are, what they did, their last book, which documentary they were in last, stuff like that, and have that conversation with them. Because they might be one of those people you want to shadow.
Yeah.
But they won't allow you to shadow. They feel like you don't even know who they are.
What they do.
Yeah, what they do. So do your homework every time you go. Eventually, you'll have a network of a bunch of people, and if you do it correctly, you might have people chasing you. I want you to be my intern. I want you to be my intern. No, you gotta be my intern. So, figure those things out. And this is all talk. This is all about talking and networking and stuff like that.
Yeah.
If you have issues talking, networking, if you are anxious, if you are a little scared of these things, there are free. There's the Dutch Debate Union or the Dutch Debate Foundation. You can go over there and get a free training on how to get out of your shell. I would also, if you're still under 18, I would go to youth debates. I would try to be part of things like that to really work on that skill. Because if you're that black child and you don't have all the resources, your presence, how you stand there, your stage presence, your voice, how you get your thoughts across is really your resource and your youth. So use that. And if you're cute, use that too. Not in a bad way, but you know, present yourself and work on the things that you know you have trouble with. That have to do with getting who you are across.
And I like that you said if somebody's anxious or if they're uncomfortable in spaces, I'd like to point out people to Stichting Black Men Talk. Shout out to the guys there. I like what they're doing for men in particular, because you know, with men it's like they don't want to get involved in certain things because it's like, that's whack, that's not cool, that's not stylish. Stichting Black Men Talk, that's another place to go to as well. Okay, I'm learning something too. No, I just take these tips, take notes, and send an email to carla@byin.org if you have any questions. Awesome. How do I say thank you in Congo? And what's Luba? Yes.
In Chiluba, I don't know.
Okay.
And in Ningala it's more like in Ningala they say more like, our blessings to you for doing this. Like mapamboli na yo, and something like that, you know. Or they say it in French. So, but that's because the Lingala I speak is intermixed with. You have the pure version. That is there. I just don't know it. So people say, mapamboli na yo.
Thank you. Well, I almost forgot my head scratch question. English. Head scratch question, or the dandruff question. This is why I make you think a little bit and I make it hard for you. I make you choose between two things. One has got to go. You can only choose one. Congo or Angola? I
can't choose. Those are my mom and my dad. I can't choose.
That's why it's a head scratch. Let's scratch.
I can't choose. I think I have to give a little to both.
Okay.
So when it comes to my cooking, I lean more towards Angolan cooking than Congolese cooking. I think because my mom. And when it comes to language, music, dressing, community.
Congo music, wow.
It's
so close.
Just a little bit more Congo, because I mean, it's Congo.
It's Congo. Yeah, I mean, we grew up to so much Congo. We used to eat Congolese music. Kanda bongo man, in the morning.
Yes.
You know, your Papa Wembas.
Papa Wemba. Pepe Kale.
Pepe Kale.
Yes. Yes.
Super Mazembe.
All of them.
It's quite, it was our breakfast.
Yeah.
Breakfast.
Yeah. And when Papa Wemba died, it was a cry from Africa, you know, even seeing that on Twitter and stuff like it gave me goosebumps, because that was like my uncle on the video, on the VCR,
in your mind,
in my mind, and for him to have touched all these people.
Yeah.
I have to say for that I
Mhm.
have to say Congo.
Yeah.
And language also.
Language. Yeah.
Just Lingala. What also people say to thank is Nzambia Pambula you,
Zambia Pambula yo.
which means may God bless you. It's a way of thanking.
I thank you for taking so much of your time to be with my little small podcast.
No, it's fine. It's gonna grow.
I wish you nothing but success in the next 4 years in the council, and we want to see you become mayor.
Oh Lord, mayor. That's scary. Like, you know, the mayor is the mayor.
The mayor is the mayor.
Yeah.
Well, all Parliament, to follow Miss Sylvana. Shout out Sylvana.
Yeah, that's big too. Like Sylvana, what she takes on.
Oh
over
gosh,
there.
every day it's like, wow.
And how she does, and to look so radiant
all the time.
All the time while doing it. I don't know if I could do it. I don't.
Oh, I think you can. I saw your protest for Africans in Ukraine. You brought it. Come on now. We have to give people their flowers every day.
Yeah.
And I'm going to start right now.
Oh, thank
Flowers to Carla Kabamba.
Well, thank you for giving me this opportunity over here. And thank you for showing me
all the little things.
Yeah, the way that you've put everything together. I thank you for your for the space, for the opportunity, and I wish you so much success with the podcast.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for the compliments as well. Like this really gives energy. This really shows.
It does. Oh gosh, I hope so.
Yes, it does. It really makes things worthwhile, and I find it extra special because you're Bantu.
Bantu. On that note, see you next time.
See you next time.
Bantu.